How's that for an opening song? I played it myself. It's Dragon Ball Dissection time. In our last installment, we had reached Phase 2 of Dragon Ball GT's slow and methodical shift from Dragon Ball Hunt to Epic Fight. What's different about Phase 2? Well, Phase 2 is when the series starts using music from the 10th anniversary movie. And that's pretty cool, but I suppose it's more important for our purposes that it centers around the group's betrayal on planet M2. It turns out that Giru is working for the bad guys. This seems to be a somewhat clumsy attempt to retroactively recontextualize early material so that it ties into this newly unfolding story. As in, the characters spending 3 episodes on Omega isn't a relic of an abandoned plot, it's where they meet Giru, and Giru leads them straight to the bad guys. It's all connected. I applaud them for the effort, although I think Giru is important enough to the cast that he doesn't need to tie into the villains to justify his existence. However, it is an absolutely massive coincidence that the very first person the trio meet who has any lasting impact on them just happens to be directly connected to the villains. If Giru was the first person to draw them to the villains, that he puts them on that track, that would be one thing. But Dr. Mew and his machine mutants cross paths with Goku and the others completely independently of anything Giru does. The coincidences stretch even thinner, with Neji commenting that Giru was apparently designed to be a Dragon Radar all along. And that is just really, really weird. This is clearly meant to tie more things together, but all it does is draw attention to how these two halves of the story don't really fit. Is it another massive coincidence that Trunks just happened to drop the Dragon Radar when Giru made noise? Is it a lucky break for the baddies that Giru ate the Dragon Radar so that he could then pretend to have absorbed its power? Is he pretending that any change takes place, or does he incorporate the radar's aesthetic into his existing function? Why does he need to have a Dragon Ball locating function in the first place? To justify why he's not on planet M2? Well, a robot is going to say that Dr. Mew's goal is to spread machine mutants throughout the universe, so there doesn't seem to be a need to give Giru another justification. If he can locate Dragon Balls, why is he found on a planet that doesn't have one? And all of those questions prompt the question as to why and how Dr. Mew is looking for Dragon Balls in the first place. I mean, clearly they can come in handy to any megalomaniac, but let's assume that Giru was conceived for the sole purpose of collecting Dragon Balls. It follows then that Dr. Mew must have some knowledge that Dragon Balls exist. I'm not sure how, but he does. But remember that these Black Star Dragon Balls that are the focus of this series are not well known and have seemingly never been used before. They only activate just before Goku and the others meet Giru in the first place. So while it's possible Dr. Mew immediately noticed that and sprang into action, it seems far more likely he's aware of Dragon Balls through the far more prolific examples of Earth's or planet Namek, like Vegeta was. And those balls stay confined to their own world. So, if you have a robot under your control who can seek out the Dragon Balls you need in order to do whatever it is you need them for, why would you send said robot to any other planet besides Earth or Namek? You're literally looking everywhere but where you know Dragon Balls are. And if that's the case, the fact that Giru doesn't just starve to death in the Omegan Desert, but is instead taken on a Dragon Ball quest by the only 3 people in space who know there are spacefaring Dragon Balls, is a stroke of luck that makes winning the lottery look like finding food in a grocery store. Does any of this make sense? I honestly don't know because it's never really explained. And the worst part is, I'm not even sure if everything I just said is a moot point given what we learn by the end of this phase. Giru leads Goku and Trunks into a trap. Now only Pan is left to try to sort things out. Admittedly, the last several episodes have done nothing but make me despise any time Pan is on screen, but I still have a lot of goodwill towards her from the beginning of the series, and I love when she gets a chance to prove herself. Today's first episode is all about her, and I gotta say, I love her antics. It's a far better showcase for her actual talents than episode 15 was. You know, unless dying in a desert is a talent. In that case, she's an expert. but her comedy of errors infiltration does a good job straddling that line between farce and real emotional stakes. She breaks out the hiding behind a plant gag she used during the Zunama encounter in order to get close to the main headquarters. After some misadventures with stealth, she ends up wearing a robot chassis to great effect. Pan manages to view a ceremony honoring Giru for his services against her, which rightly angers her. But at that point, another robot reminds her that she's supposed to be on patrol duty. Wait, how does that work? She picked up robot parts from an assembly line.
You're on patrol duty, I know, because I recognize you, even though you're identical to every other robot. I must be able to interface with your software, but you don't have any. I recognize your serial number, although you've never been activated. How do I know you?
Well, somehow the robot recognizes her. It's funny, she actually beats up a robot earlier, so all of this could have been explained away if she had just impersonated that robot. But I suppose if she'd cannibalized that robot, that would have been tantamount to murder, and all of a sudden this show recognizes that robots are sentient. Pan is moved to patrol duty, but the robots on M2 can apparently phase through metal, so when Pan can't make it past the barrier at platform 9 3/4, yuck. That joke was much less painful when I wrote it in 2018. Let me try again. Magic barriers. When Pan can't make it past that rock wall that leads to Dino Hatton in the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie? Nailed it. She is tossed in the reject pile where all the malfunctioning robots are destroyed. There, she meets a broken robot I like to call Exposition Bot. Or I guess I could call him Pink Grandpa, given that he's coded as an old man with a bushy robot mustache, and is pink. His main role is to unload a whole bunch of exposition on Pan to keep the plot rolling, which seems rather convenient. Then again, he tells her he was tossed into the reject pile because he talks too much, so hey, you got me there. He explains what I said earlier about Dr. Mew's goal being to propagate his machine mutants throughout the universe. In a flashback, we see that this planet used to have a native population, until the machine mutants wiped them out. As the flashback shows fire scarring the landscape, Exposition Bot's voice starts skipping, repeating the planet's population over and over again. It's pretty chilling. He also helpfully exposits that Goku and Trunks are being kept in the laboratory on the top floor, so Pan blasts her way out, resulting in a reject revolution as all the broken bots escape too. It would have been so much cooler if she'd actually led the rejects to fight back against their oppressors. This mass chaos finally blows her cover something fierce. The robots who captured Goku and Trunks are collectively known as Mega Cannon Sigma because... 90s. Individually, they're named after hardware fasteners. Nut, whose pun source should be obvious, no, not that, you weirdos, asks for the chance to take out Pan on his own. Nut frustrates her by phasing through walls and stymieing her at every opportunity. See, they've been scanning Giru to learn Goku's and Trunks' abilities. Eventually, he makes the mistake of twisting the knife by bragging about Giru's betrayal being responsible for her predicament. This finally sets Pan off, who cries and launches a huge blast, one that far exceeds her potential in the data. Nut is destroyed, leading to Pan's most iconic line, "Girls, you see, get stronger once they're crying." Yeah, girls. And Gohan. And Goku. And Kuririn. Maybe even Vegeta. Possibly everybody. But yeah, also girls. Still, being given emotional stakes to take out a villain is a great moment for Pan. Periodically, the episode has been shifting back to the robots, scanning Goku and Trunks, collecting their Sento power. See, it's different from Frieza's battle powers because they said the whole thing in Japanese. These guys only say half of it in Japanese. They pull out memories from Giru and crack jokes about tricking the heroes. Eventually, though, Goku wakes up and protests that Trunks was Giru's friend and that Pan loves him. Hilariously, this is punctuated by a broadcast memory of Pan threatening him with scissors, so that's kind of a hard sell, Goku. At that moment, Pan bursts in, but is immediately knocked out. This is a great episode, giving Pan much to do, but it's clearly setting the stage for Goku to save her, rather than the other way around. Trunks is awake too, so Goku buys him time to get Pan to safety and return to the ship. If Giru has betrayed them, they need to check on the Dragon Balls. Well, that ship has already sailed, unfortunately, as Trunks finds out. He frantically searches everywhere to no avail, cursing Giru for betraying them. In his zeal, he throws a can, which hits Pan, waking her up. Good job taking care of her. The rest of the episode is a battle between Goku and Mega Cannon Sigma, or rather, the remaining 3 members of them. Neji, a play on the Japanese word for screw, vis, the French word for screw, and rivet, a play on rivet. And I wouldn't know which of the latter 2 was which if not for the perfect file, as they have no individual identities in the show. Anyway, they serve as the big fight before the big fight. And for a single episode diversion, they're fine enough. Aside from having lots of inorganic attacks like flamethrowers and machine guns and rockets, their main advantage, like Nut had told Pan, is that they have Goku's battle data and can anticipate his every move. And also, like with Pan, they get the upper hand by phasing in and out of the walls. Neji, the leader, taunts Goku that he can't even deal with something this simple. However, Goku insists this isn't simple, it's incredible! I don't know, that sounds like something someone who's losing would say to make his loss sound less pathetic. However, Goku figures it out quickly enough. He fires enough blasts to knock them out of the walls. Neji is awestruck at how he could do this, but now I get to say that that's not incredible, it's simple. He just fired a bunch of blasts. Oh wait, I'm sorry. How could I have missed this? He broke out Vegeta's signature move! No wonder they're impressed. No, I'm never letting that go. Turns out that Mega Cannon Sigma can combine into a single robot, which is a pretty fun gimmick. Obviously, 3 robots combining into one is something Goku should be familiar with. It's hard to tell without context, but they don't seem to be missing anything without Nut, so I wonder what his role even is. In true Dragon Ball fashion, they dismiss him as basically the Raditz of their group, so maybe he has no combined function. He just sits on the sidelines and waves a cute little supportive flag when they fight. Goku, however, catches them in a reverse Ten Shinhan. Rather than one guy splitting into multiple guys resulting in less power, 3 guys combining into one guy results in less speed. In response, Metal Cannon Sigma reconfigures into flying formation, and then some kind of drill head formation. There are at least some creative designs here. Goku accedes to that too, but he's done with this. He's actually been holding back this whole time. He thought it was unfair they knew everything about him, so he's just been screwing around long enough to collect his own data. And immediately kills them. This fight feels quite a bit like early Dragon Ball, both for good and for bad. It's fun, it doesn't stretch itself out until it overstays its welcome, but it's a bit disappointing how quickly it goes from a curb stomp in one direction to a curb stomp in the other direction. Goku, or any other number of characters, announcing that they're not using their whole power is a Dragon Ball staple, but it's usually used to mark a turning point where the battle becomes more intense. It's such a fast whiplash here that it ends up being disappointing. Plus, given that Goku spends the whole battle happy and excited, there's never a moment where it feels like he's ever in danger of losing. He just doesn't win. Until he decides he does. But the biggest disappointment is how awful this episode looks. Even by Last House standards, it's really obvious in its cutting of corners. There's a particularly hilarious moment where Pan doesn't walk into frame. Her cell just slides into it. It's almost to the point of parody. The defeat of Mega Cannon Sigma signals General Rild's time to jump in. Goku flies back to the spaceship to warn Trunks and Pan. He even comments that this guy is stronger than Boo. So, lead him back to your friends. And I know, from my time in the fandom, that this random nobody being stronger than one of the main antagonists is considered highly controversial. And I agree with you, that Rild is a random nobody. But it shouldn't really surprise you that I don't care. I'd rather characters not make direct comparisons at all, so that relative strength could potentially have more nuance and chance. But if the new villains aren't stronger than the old villains, then what's even the point? The point is to have a good story and an entertaining fight. Rirudo is an anagram of Doriru, or drill, hence Rild. He exposits to the group that Dr. Mew needs their Dragon Balls for his total galaxy conquest operation. And look, I know I just said I don't care about the Boo comparison, but I have to split my own hairs. The show constantly jumps back and forth between galaxy and universe, and it drives me crazy. Does Dr. Mew want to take over the galaxy or the universe? I need to know because those are 2 very different goals. While I was blabbing about that, Rild uses his smelting breath on Pan, but Trunks jumps in the way, getting trapped in carbonite. No, that is unmistakably a carbonite slab from The Empire Strikes Back. It's not even subtle. We got ourselves a regular Han Solo over here! General Rild teleports him back to the tower. A tower? Is it the same tower? I don't know. I thought that was destroyed in the Mega Cannon Sigma fight. Pan flies off to rescue Trunks while Goku stays to fight Rild, and yeesh, haven't we been here before? In regards to the carbonite, why didn't they just use that in the first place? It certainly would have kept their test subjects from getting up and walking away. Rild says Trunks is going to be shipped to Dr. Mew to be studied. If the ultimate goal was to ship them to Dr. Mew so he could study them, why did they even screw around studying them on him too? Why did they have two different methods to capture and study somebody? Their initial study only pays off in the sense that they need to use that data to fight Goku, which they didn't know they were going to have to do since they'd already captured Goku. Goku spends the next few episodes fighting General Rild, and I guess I gave the impression a couple of episodes ago that I really hate this guy, but I don't. I just don't care about him. He's boring. He's the most generic, angry, fighty guy I've seen since General White. No, at least General White was having some degree of fun. This is Colonel Silver levels of boring. If I'm at all offended by the comparison to Boo, it's not because of the power scaling. It's because Boo is defined by his joie de vivre, and this guy has no personality whatsoever. I hate his design, from his stupid yellow hat, to his life jacket armor, to his literal shoulder blades. At the very least, Rild has interesting powers, such as his smelting breath that covers the landscape and their ship in metal. When Goku gets the better of him, Mega Cannon Sigma return to life, somehow, just so Goku can immediately kill them again so that Rild can absorb them and transform. How convenient. And for me, it's especially hilarious because I first saw this right as I was working on the DVD episode for the 7th Dragon Ball Z movie. You know, the one where its villain does the exact same thing. At this, General Rild becomes Hyper Mega Rild. Good lord. Hyper Mega Rild combines all the parts of Mega Cannon Sigma. I'm beginning to think the writers were paid by the adjective. That makes him look extremely over-designed, but at least the red is more appealing on him. Once Goku bests that form, Rild merges with the metallic landscape, becoming buildings and the like. He actually is the planet and can control any bit of metal on it. Now he's known by the comparatively simple name of Mega Rild. Did they flip these by accident? It's a pretty cool concept, he just looks so naked. I know characters like Frieza and Cell are also naked, but they look less naked due to having other colors. Also, Frieza has a tail, which probably hides the outline of his butt crack. I want to call this guy General Manhattan. I like how Goku and Pan both have things to do, but given how Rild is a nothing character, it makes the fight feel obligatory. Something they have to periodically cut to just to keep the audience engaged. Nothing of importance is really happening. But even more damning is that it's far more enjoyable to watch than the actual story. Pan spends an entire episode and a half breaking into the tower. Again! I loved it the first time, but it turns out love is not better the second time around. That it's redundant is bad enough, but it's unbearably repetitive just on its own. Pan beats up some robots, she finds the room and confronts Giru. The robots activate the intruder removal system. The room warps and throws Pan out. This sequence of events happens 3 times! Eventually, she recruits the help of Exposition Bot, who disables the removal system. Pan gets her emotionally cathartic scene of confronting Giru for his betrayal, accusing him of saving her in the desert just to be able to bring her here. Giru tries to cover his eye, but he can't do it completely, so we can see Pan reflected in the glass. It's a nice shot of the guilt he can't escape. Well, at least not until he reactivates the system, so we can go through that again. Remember, the only narrative purpose to all of this is to save Trunks, who is teleported to Dr. Mew's planet right as Pan makes it to him the first time. So every other attempt Pan makes is a waste of time. It feels like this is being dragged out to give Goku more time to fight. So both sections are essentially excuses for the other. As if that wasn't bad enough, this episode really heavily sexualizes Pan, and I just don't understand why. There are so many tight shots on her butt or her crotch. Between that and Mega Rild, this is a very horny episode. And at first I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt that the camera framing was just a coincidence. After all, there isn't anything explicitly sexual about the context they're in, they just happen. For seemingly no reason, which is weird enough on its own. However, there's a sequence where Pawn tries to enlist Exposition Bot's aid. She starts rubbing up on him and making little plaintive sexual moans. I hate this! Then there's a scene where a bunch of robots crowd into an elevator with them and we hear Pawn tell them not to touch her in strange places. Ew, stop! There's a point where I have to concede I'm not just imagining connections or being too sensitive. You may have noticed I didn't say a word against the sexual implications of Pawn putting the key down her shirt in episode 3. I've definitely heard people criticize it as such. I don't think it's the slightest bit weird that a kid would know to do that. It's a genuine moment and it's in character. There, I have now officially defended that. In this episode, a sexual undercurrent is slathered on so thick and so frequently that I really have to question the show's motives. Why would Pawn even try to seduce a robot? Why would she need to for this one in particular? He already proved himself willing to help her in an episode far better and less creepy than this one. It's one thing when moments like this spring organically from character, it's another when I can clearly see the writer's hands at work. And it's what they're probably using those hands to do that bothers me. Stop trying to make the child sexy! Whew, that's quite enough for today. It's amazing how quickly everything went downhill. But there are big reveals next time, so many big reveals, so many twists, more twists than Chubby Checker. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Do they push the story forward or undermine what we've already seen? Maybe both? Hey everybody, just in case you don't know, I have a new Patreon goal up, and when it's met, I will cover the 2 Dragon Ball prototypes, Dragon Boy and The Adventure of Tongpu, as a Dragon Ball dissection episode, just like I did a few years ago with Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans. These are the one-shots Toriyama wrote to get his feet wet for what would become Dragon Ball, so they're very important pieces of the lore. So, that's there if you're interested. As always, I greatly appreciate your support and your generosity. I'll see you next time!